Welcome back, everybody, to the Denver Dzogchen Podcast. I'm very excited today to not only have Joe Wagner with us, as per usual, but we also have our dear friend Ricky Coffin, who you haven't met yet, but has acted as the producer for this show behind the scenes, putting together all those awesome videos, making sure they're on YouTube, making sure they have all the tags and all of that techie stuff that we don't know how to do. So we really appreciate Ricky. And today Ricky's going to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about his Dharma path and how he came to Denver Dzogchen. It'll be super fun to get into it. Welcome, Ricky. Great to see you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Joe and Damien. It's great to be here with y'all. Thanks for the invitation. And yeah, so my entryway into Buddhism, aside from reading some books, maybe in my late teens about Buddhism, um, I I didn't really get into it until about 20 years ago or so. I was into yoga quite a bit, Iyengar yoga specifically, like kind of like hatha yoga, and learning about all the different type of yoga philosophy and kind of that whole world. And I was doing a weekend workshop with a teacher. Her name is Deborah Ann Robinson, and I didn't know much about her at the time. She was just one of the more kind of senior level Iyengar teachers who was traveling through Denver. And I think it was on Sunday morning for one of the sessions, she offered a meditation class, which it seemed to be a little bit different than the other types of meditation offerings that the other teachers or the studio offered. And some years later, I came to find that she's a Tibetan Buddhist. Uh, Trungpa Rinpoche was her, her root lama, and she actually is the director of his organization that he founded, the Himalayan Children's Fund or Foundation as well. So really a lovely person, and a great teacher, and that I think maybe planted some seeds. And over the years, like since then, I was exploring different types of Buddhism, like Zen Buddhism, Theravada, going to retreats, like a lot of us have done, like the Vipassana retreats and so on. Um, and then it was probably maybe in like 2018 or so, I came across a quote by this person above my head, Tulku Rinpoche. And it's his well-known quote about how basically everyone has the same Buddha nature. Like the only difference between the Buddha and everyone else is that a Buddha has realized their true nature. And I still remember when I was reading through um that text and I read that, it was like a like I've seen the world differently since then, you know? And that was kind of my entryway into being more interested in Tibetan Buddhism. And it took a little while, but I lived in Denver at the time. I live pretty close to Denver now, but I was searching online for local Tibetan Buddhist centers, and I did find Denver Dzogchen at the time. But it took me a while to actually reach out. Um, and And then, of course, when I did reach out, it was like 2020 when all the COVID shutdown was happening. So the group switched to Zoom at the time. And but yeah, that's how basically I like to think Toko Urgyen Rinpoche kind of connected me with Joe and Denver Dzogchen. So yeah, and it's been just absolutely great since then. Yeah, it's coming up on 6 years since I've been practicing with you.
Amazing.
That's great. Yeah, I totally think that there's something real to what you're saying, that there's this connection to Tulku Urgyen that people have who find Denver Dzogchen. I definitely think he's got his blessing is coming through Joe, and leading the people who find this group, who especially the ones who really stick around, often have a strong connection to Tulku Urgyen, even if they didn't before, they do afterwards. So I think that that's an amazing glue for our group. So once you connected, how did you find yourself approaching this path and really taking it on? Because it can be so daunting. The Tibetan tradition is like massive, and how did the group help you kind of follow that path?
Sure. Well, yeah, I think once I was connected, and I also during our first Tuesday night session, I totally had my mind blown. By the way, um, and I was quickly all in. It was kind of like drinking from the fire hydrant, the fire hose. And you know how we could go through these phases. Um, in our practice. I was like buying lots of books and trying to, you know, practice with other, offerings, other teachers when they're offering stuff, whether it was on Zoom or if they're traveling through. Um, and really just trying to kind of gain a better understanding of like kind of the basics and the preliminaries, and that led me to, I think it was maybe maybe like 4 or 5 months into the practice, I I started to ask Joe about Ngondro, you know and then shortly thereafter started to do it. So yeah, and that was more or less my main practice for a while. It took me a little while. My wife and I had our first child, and we bought our first house during the time, and I worked a full-time job. So it took me maybe a few years to do it. Um, but that was also a, a transformative undertaking as well, which is still kind of like uh coming to fruition or unraveling at this point. And I want to say, I was thinking about, talking about Ngondro, and I also want to give some thanks to Joe, because he makes himself like very available, not only to me but to everyone in the Sangha. And at certain points in the Sangha, I was checking in with him every day about my progress. Um, and that really helped me kind of keep, my accumulations going. And it helped me, like, things could get kind of bumpy when you're doing these big practices, and it's not all smooth sailing. Um, so thank you, Joe, for that as well.
My pleasure. I thought it was very fun that time when you and your wife Dana received, you guys requested the transmission for the Tundra. We did it outside because it was COVID. We had to do it in your backyard in your garden. I thought that was a unique experience in my life too, and it seemed to take. So
Yeah.
good job.
Well, and also it was in June. It was like a Colorado blue sky day. And when you came over, like it rained for like a couple of minutes. I don't know if you remember that, but that was auspicious as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it was good connection. It's been a good connection to have you in the group. If I can ask a question, I know that you were even authorized to teach in the Theravada tradition before you found our group. I'd be curious, just any lightweight reflections you might have about the difference between your involvement in Theravada path and then now in the Vajrayana path. I'm just curious because I was never involved in Theravada in any serious way. So I'm just curious when you look back, like what you brought with you, what you left behind, whatever, anything like that.
Sure. Yeah, a lot of my focus had been, or my practice had focused on like metta, like cultivating that compassion. It's in some ways it's similar, to certain aspects of our practice, uh, but slightly different in other ways. But um, lots of that kind of like, becoming familiar with the suttas or the sutras, things like that. And there can be a type of vipassana, kind of like body scanning
Mm.
exercise, and a lot of sitting also for long periods, maybe like with um uh I mean sometimes with focus, sometimes with not focus, but well, I guess there was probably a lot of focus on the breath, you know. If you weren't like thinking about anything else, it was usually like coming back to the breath. So I I do think that like in one of the retreats I did um at a center in Idaho, I was sharing a tent with a guy who was a farmer, and I was so glad in hindsight to have like a farmer as a tent mate because he woke up really early every day and he had like a very hard work ethic. And before the retreat like officially started, we could talk to each other, and then it was a vow of silence afterward, after like the first night. Um and he was like, "You know what? I'm all in. Like I'm gonna like wake up as early as I can and stay in the meditation hall as late as I can. I'm here. I might as well like do that." And I was like, "That sounds good." And I kind of copied, he motivated me to do that. So we were sitting for like 16 hours a day, and it was like a 10-day thing. And when you do that, at least in my experience, like um I s- you kind of go into these different states, um and I and then after that retreat I brought that practice home. I wasn't doing it for like 16 hours,
Mm.
but still like 4 hours a day of just sitting and doing breath focus. And I do feel like that's helped my practice like moving forward, um in one way or another. Like everything we do kind of leads to the next thing, and you could find wisdom in it. But just having that steady mind and being comfortable with pain, or even like um, just observing it. And yeah, that also like the meta practice that I mentioned. Um, you know, I've I've really been drawn to like the practices of a bodhisattva as well, and that's something we've done with with the Denver Dzogchen group as well, like in our kind of subgroup. Um, but I think that also kind of laid the groundwork or planted some seeds for me as well. Um, yeah, yeah. So yeah, and I mean when one of my teachers like basically encouraged me to lead meditation for others, it was during a retreat and I was having an interview with her, and she said something to the effect that, she noticed how well I was sitting and, for long periods, and with the questions I was asking her, she was like, well, her sense was that other people had those questions, so like she was trying to encourage me, to kind of have get out there with others, and
Mm.
kind of yeah, keep it going,
Yeah. I was
yeah,
just wondering because that's a pretty advanced level to get to. Obviously your teacher saw in you uh, the qualities were arising, and then I'm just curious how that related to what you found in the Vajrayana tradition, since at least from outside, for many people, they seem very, very different.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it is quite different in lots of ways as well. Like now, we can do different types of visualizations, and I don't know. I don't want to. I definitely feel like I resonate um very closely with our path in the Vajrayana. Uh sometimes we talk about it like an accelerated path. Um and yeah, I don't want to come off as like sounding negative about any other traditions or anything, but for me, it's like how I mentioned, even just reading that quote by Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche was like a transformative moment for me. And there's been multiple instances of that, in the practices that either we've done in our group or with other lamas along the way.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
want to say that I think this is it's such a great foundation, right? Like I also came from Hatha Yoga and Vipassana before I got into Vajrayana, and I think that some of my success in this path really had to do with having had that, having had time just sitting, having had time working with the body. These are important parts of the ground, even in the Tibetan tradition, but they're often skipped over as that the way it's presented in the West. And Joe, you had the Zen background of just sitting before you got into Vajrayana. I think there's probably something to doing a little bit of that first, before you really get into the complex visualization and all of these practices. That just gaining that stability of mind and some shamatha, and vipassana can really make it stick in a way that it maybe wouldn't without it. Because I've heard so many people maybe even practicing Vajrayana for 15 years and like, I can't visualize, right? Like, they'll still say these sorts of things. And I wonder if there isn't some link between not having had a foundation in shamatha, that can really, lead to some problems later on. And so I think that there's a real natural kind of progression from the Theravada or Hinayana vehicle to these upper vehicles of Mahayana and Vajrayana and Dzogchen. That it really is a perfect trajectory.
Yeah. I think it's also worth saying that everybody's different and everybody, they say there are 84,000 Dharma doors, one door for every type of person. So some people might do the exact opposite. And I remember reading that Stephen Batchelor, he was a monk in the Vajrayana tradition for a long time, and then he got heavily into Theravada. I don't know where he is right now, but I think we have to keep our eyes open as practitioners. It's nice to hear Ricky say it, for those flags from the ultimate that are being waved in our face, so we know where to go next. Because there's no, of course, you could have a teacher, and your teacher will tell you, but the teacher is also within a tradition, and in the West, we're open to many things. Many of us came from a Christian background when we grew up, and I know I studied a lot of Taoism and a lot of Tai Chi and energy practices, and there's just so many things out there. You want to keep your field open because you never know. For you, Ricky, it was a quote by Tulku Urgyen. For somebody else, it might be something from the Pali canon that is like, oh my God, that's the way to go. And we want to follow the bent of our own genius, like Thoreau said. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Ricky, because not, we say, oh yeah, and the Tibetans frame it that Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana, but it doesn't have to be that way for everyone, right? It might be that you start with Vajrayana, but that didn't ring true for you. And so then, when I got into Vipassana, then it really went great for me or whatever. So we're not just selling Vajrayana, even though, of course, it is the best. Oh, wait, what did I say?
When I had an experience like you did, Joe, that I'm also a bit of a heretic, and this is why I really appreciate Joe, is that I encountered Ramana Maharshi, and it was his teachings on the who am I that like blew my shamatha open, because I started to like open my field of awareness. So there's so many Dharma doors, even maybe outside of what might be considered quote unquote Dharma. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's well said. So, Ricky, you've been involved now 6 years. It's incredible it's gone by really quickly, at least from my perspective. And in fact, you're even sitting in the dark retreat facility that we built. So, like, lots of different things have happened. What's going on with Denver Dzogchen from your perspective right now? Like, what are you involved in? What are the things that are interesting that are happening right now?
Yeah, there's a lot of great momentum happening with the group right now. We have for folks tuning in that maybe you're just listeners, we have our weekly sessions on Tuesday night via Zoom. And yeah, there's always great practice, great discussion going on. Lots of active members going happening right now in our Sangha. which is really great. And we have lots of projects going on as well, and we've had some podcast episodes about that, like the Naga discs, and so on. Um, one thing I'm working on kind of behind the scenes is putting together a documentary on our prostration pilgrimage that we've done twice so far, and I think we're planning to do it again next year. So, and Joe and I, we were talking about this idea, to try to prostrate, to a holy or auspicious place, and like they do in Tibet and Nepal. And Presto in Colorado came to mind as like, maybe the best place in the country out here to do it because of all the centers, and there's two, well, there's a number of stupas there, but we chose to star that the Tokyo Urgyen Rinpoche stupa and prostrate straight to the 16th Karmapa stupa. So I think the first year we did it was 2023, right? Yeah. And we did it again in 2024. And we have some, some footage from that. So yeah, we're planning on putting out a documentary about it, to get it out there and really to try to psych people up, which is, what we love doing to motivate them. I know there maybe even before I did the Ngondro, I had like a little bit of aversion to doing prostrations, but now I'm like, I know why they do it. I know why they do these trips. And even what we do, it's like, I don't know, just under 5 miles or something like that, Joe. Is that right?
Yeah, around that.
Yeah, and it takes about half a day or so to do it. And that's been another one of those big transformative experiences that I've had. And it's nice because some members of our Sangha come, and we'll spend a couple nights out there and have meals together and so on. Visit the different centers in the area as well.
Mm.
Um, so that's been a great thing. Maybe one of the things I look forward most to.
Great.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Ricky, would you talk a little bit more about this element of Sangha? We've been recently discussing this part of the sutras where the Buddha says that the whole of the path is our spiritual friendships, right? That like you guys are my friends and we hardly have ever met in person. Ricky and I have never met in person, but we have this like daily Sangha support in a way that's the missing piece, I think, in the Western Sanghas is this really like actually, if you want it, every day we get to talk and support each other on our path, as you were saying with Joe when you were doing Ngondro, because it is so hard to maintain your motivation if you're just like grinding away at prostrations alone. That can be really difficult, but we have really such a good community of people supporting each other, all with different lamas and centers all over the country or even the world. But we come together and then actually have this support on a level that's more Western, with the accessibility of WhatsApp or podcast or Zoom meetings that really facilitate something like a real Sangha. And so maybe you could share a little bit how Sangha has been like an important part of your path.
Mm.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, it's been kind of a critical, crucial part and another great aspect of this group. And you know, I I'll get together with Joe, we might have tea and talk about practice and Dharma and planning and stuff like that. As often as we can, whether that's like once a month or 3 times a month. But a lot of the interaction I have with Sangha is like through WhatsApp, like you mentioned, Damien, and it's extremely convenient. And yeah, I have to say, like I mentioned before, Joe is very gracious with his time. If I ever have a question about something like a certain kind of aspect of a practice that's like not in the text, the teacher didn't mention it, it's not in the commentary. you can't Google it. Like you have to know, um, from just being a part of this world. And uh, probably 9 times out of 10, or even more than 9 times, Joe typically knows the answer or knows who to ask, So that's been, I don't know, I'd be missing out on that, without this group. And Damien, you know a lot about Dharma through all of your practice and diligence, and you are also very available as well. So thank you too. You could definitely tell this is like one of the most important, if not most important things in your life. So yeah, I have, and there's other people like that in the group, varying levels of practice, from like decades and decades to maybe less than a year. Um, and a lot of people also have experience in other traditions, like we've been talking about. So it's really interesting to have access to those types of people. And if someone might say something during one of our group sessions, and um whether it's something I bring up, they might reach out to me one-on-one to talk about, well, I have experience in this, or vice versa. And I think there's a lot of those kind of individual or one-on-one, conversations going on as well. We have different like subgroups as well. Um, so yeah, it's been great. And I'm thinking of a quote that one of my Theravada teachers said, Sangha is like, if you think of Buddha kind of like trailblazing, with the Dharma, and then like our job, or part of our path as part of the Sangha, is to like kind of keep on going on the trail, to keep the trail open so that those who come after us can still hike on it, so it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
When we have such a deep, like I was mentioning earlier about Tulku Origin, it's not just Tulku Origin, it's lineage, right? Like there's really a feeling of lineage. That's one of the really magical things I think of Denver Dzogchen, is that um, you feel like I don't know if you by you, but I feel connected to Choktrul Lingpa and his Dharma lineage, and to obviously Guru Rinpoche. That the blessing are there, and if you just tap into that through Sangha, then you really have like a magnetic force that can really help you along the path. And that's one of the special features of the Vajrayana, right? Like in Theravada, they don't focus on that as much, the kind of living aspect of the lineage. And that is just really, I think, huge part of this group. And the different termas and teachings that Joe teaches to our group keep us connected to this living thing, that like you said, this trailblazed thing. We're getting pulled right into it, and it really makes it fun and easy and keeps us going.
Mm. Yeah, the psych up aspect of Sangha is really good. Sometimes they say that Buddhism, to be a Buddhist, you have to think there's a goal, you have to think there's a path to get to that goal, and you have to have friends on the path. Well, this is the friends aspect. And I'm happy to count you guys as some of my closest friends. It's really a treat, It's not like I'm in charge, nothing like that. We're all working together to keep the Sangha going, to grow it through these podcasts, our various projects. Ricky's being all humble about the documentary, but he also produces this podcast every 2 weeks and gives us ideas for new things and gets people to join us. And he's making another movie about our Bayul that we have in the mountains. And it's just really, he's been a major factor in this group continuing to grow. So I want to say thank you so much, Ricky, for being both on the podcast and for being such a strong member of our Sangha. And I have the privilege of living only a few miles from Ricky, so I get to see him more frequently than other people, and it's a very good part of my path, a good support for me as well. So we appreciate you being here, really.
Yeah, so we're coming up on a half an hour. Ricky, are there some closing thoughts you'd like to share about what this group is, and how you'd like to see its future go, and how you see new people playing a part in that, everything having to do with our Sangha?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I see, just us continuing to you know, make progress on the path and welcome new members. Um, and continue to do the prostration pilgrimage. So hopefully more of our group members can come along with that. And if anyone listening to this is interested, if it kind of piques your interest at all, feel free to reach out, to get more info about that. Sometimes people even just walk it because it is pretty physical, or you could do a prostration every once in a while and walk it, or
Mm.
we also need support as well um, for that. So yeah, thinking big, and coming up with these different projects that we're doing. So I'm sure we're going to be doing more projects that like we haven't even thought about yet. Um, so yeah, when I think about it, it's just kind of exciting. Like there's uh, lots of potential, um, in the air
Mm.
for the group. And yeah, we haven't, I don't think we mentioned there's a Wednesday night in town group where we have in-person meditation at my wife and I's yoga studio in Denver, and we have a kind of a different Sangha, and there's a little blending of those. So I think I see that group growing as well. Um, So yeah, I just see lots of potential and furthering of practice and spreading of their Dharma.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you so much, Ricky, for all that you do for making this podcast. We've been doing this for over a year now, which is amazing. And we continue to have stuff to talk about, which is also amazing. And it's just great that we have your support for that technological side because it takes a lot of work to put this out. It seems like a simple thing, but it really is. So thank you so much. And thank you for being part of this Sangha, and glad to call you one of my closest Vajra brothers. And, yeah, I look forward to the future activities of Denver Dzogchen, and I'm sure we'll have you back on sometime when we have these new projects, the documentary, etc., to talk about these things. So thank you very much, and thank you to all you listeners who watch this show. We really appreciate you. Slowly growing, seeing more views and comments all the time. I really appreciate all of that. That helps other people also see this who might fit the tendril of our group. And thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.